Welcome back to Let's Get On With It, Rise of the Star Kings. It has been 5 days for me. I said I would require some time after Bran's incredibly eventful reign to recharge my creative juices. Given a little thought to the story of House Ravenor in my absence, a few minutes while on a walk, several minutes while I'm in the shower. Nothing immense. Really just been to conceptualize what life has been like for these emperors and for imperial citizens. So, we start off with Clovis Ravenor, the Conqueror, Emperor of Cybrixia, destroyer of the weak and ineffectual Lundgren bloodline. It makes sense that House Ravenor was a minor house of this Star Empire, which managed to accumulate and amass military power. Perhaps on the outskirts of it, came into the homeworld and gutted it. Where Clovis then established his reign, people were cautious about the regime change, weary of the old regime. And I speak in general terms. Obviously, we're, speaking about, multiple planets, billions of people. No. Think about how many, cultures and subcultures are present upon our planet. And expand that concept across the stars. How many folks do really care? How many are really invested in ongoing events? The primary focus would be how do these changes impact me? And Clovis started strong, took that conqueror's mentality to visit the other planets and make sure they fell in line. Through one means or another, but primarily through the exhibition of military strength. He's on the rise. People can see that he's on the rise. They latch on to the ideal. Other houses, see this as opportunities to gain wealth and power for themselves. They grasp on and they hold tightly. And it led to a golden age with the discovery of ancient wisdom discovered on the planet of Erebus, lost to time, but then unearthed by Alira Ravenor, eager to follow in the footsteps of her father, ambitious, driven, dedicated, wanting to make a name for herself and not be some spoiled child, not fall to weakness. And it would make sense that Clovis and Eleanor did not coddle their children. I would not say they would have been forced into austerity. I would not say they would have been cruel, but would have been a severe lifestyle. Lyra, departs from that, goes out on her own, a directive to explore uncharted stars, and discovers the lost secrets of rejuvenation, fueled by a near-unique catalyst which only grows upon Erebus. Or, I should say now, only grew upon Erebus at the time. More on that in a bit, of course. Of course. However, the Golden Age was brief. It had been so long that the people had endured the Lundgren bloodline that they hadn't really attached a sense of loyalty, their hopes and dreams fully and completely to the Ravenor bloodline. And people of the homeworld grew bored. And they departed. There was a real talent drain exacerbated by the conqueror's mentality in proliferating the discoveries, as well as ensuring proper supply lines and key military installations were set up and under his control to ensure that no, say, loyalists or, came up to try and threaten his rule, or like any other houses made a challenge to his power, which promptly sent House Ravenor and the entire empire into a fall. Clovis, you can imagine, struggling. As the conqueror, it's easier to destroy than to build, and just tightly gripping onto everything. But the fall continues long after his demise. Alira then becomes, is known as the Cruel, and I thought about, whether that was a, an unfair, like, interpretation, that the official histories were unkind here, that perhaps she was not actually cruel at all. It was just how she was portrayed, it seemed. But no, I firmly believe cruelty was a part of her when she was young, and only became more present as she grew older and into her position as emperor. Her major events involved a foreign power, seeing the weakness of Cybrixia and striving to capitalize. Alira caves the first time, but when the Orion Collective then comes back over the top and says that's not good enough, she sinks, like, the entire empire, talent drained and straining against control and conceiving of new ideas, lost to time, like, what if we didn't have to be ruled by an imperial government? What if there were other forms of government systems that we could indulge in, really? Oh, perish the thought. And you can see whereas, like, Clovis, like, grasped tightly and kept his hands on the reins, even with when the reins were, like, digging through his flesh and into the bone, and even when, like, one of the reins, I could continue the torture. Just cancel that. Alira was just like, had clenched her hands in a solid fist and just kept slamming down on her populace and on the territories around her, to ensure that weakness was not perceived in her, that House Ravenor did not fall so quickly. She died in an attack funded by the Orion Collective to a separatist militant faction known as the Philosophers of the Ancients. More about them later. And then we ended up with Miriam, the Builder, who narrowly avoided a forced marriage, which would have rendered Cybrixia a vassal of the Orion Collective. And she, reflecting on her mother and her maternal grandfather, sworn foe of the Orion Collective. That's right, Heater. A sworn foe of the Orion Collective. You can take a break. We're in the stars, right? Thank you, though, for your contribution to service. Miriam's, you can, like, the events we roll, in which I've written, like, paragraphs, are the major events. But there are minor events in there as well, which color Miriam's interactions with people, with her family. Still, like, any attempt for her to establish control, for her to pull the Empire out of its fall, for her to defeat the Orion Collective in a war that her mother ended with a temporal anomaly, a near instantaneous, like, sequence for her and those aboard her vessel, but a period of 24 years passed in her absence. Now, reflect upon, if you're old enough to do so, how technology has changed for us denizens of the planet Earth over the past 24 years. How dialects, how words in the lexicon have changed, cultures and subcultures, how interpretations and considerations, consciousness, have shifted over the past 24 years in nations across the globe. Now factor in that technology is far more advanced during the reign of the Star Kings, and you're looking at a series of multiple planets, which can be reached with jump drives, but it takes a little bit of time to traverse between planets. Those planets each with their own separate, continents, their cultures, their subcultures, their dialects, mannerisms, colloquialisms, idioms. Miriam is totally fucking out of the loop. Outmoded way of thought. She comes back and the homeworld's like, we have made peace with the Orion Collective. Yes, it is a truce, but it is good. It was good. It is giving us time to rebuild, to reforge ourselves. He will remain vigilant, but we must cast our gaze inward to replenish that which we have lost. And she looks at Edgar, who has been without her for 24 years, but to her it was only a short amount of time. Yes, we have ensured this truce, a blood truce, which has remained intact, and both sides are doing their damnedest to adhere to it. We must not falter in this watch. And she looks at Bran, who had been named Emperor, a diplomat in the vein of his father, and he feels the same way. And she's like, what the fuck? What has happened? She's struggling to process the culture shock of her absence on top of, shifting, political realities for her. And though the citizens eagerly celebrated her return, and she had public support in taking the throne, she didn't do great. We can see how Bran stepped aside, but remained a political force alongside his father behind the scenes to effectively keep Miriam weakened and unable to bring war back to the Orion Collective. This is further exacerbated through the actions of William Sartell, her trusted department head of Starfleet design, the father of Bran's wife, and how Miriam ends up treating him as she just lashes out, how dare you question this? This is real. She never, understandably, if we blipped and 24 years passed for me, if I just went from 2000 to 2024, here I am. There's a lot there that doesn't have to be said. The official histories don't have to cover all the details. We can, play around with the fuzzy edges and, visualize what reality is like. But what life would have been in these tense moments within the Imperial family and with those, various department heads and other individuals in major and minor houses within the Empire, and for your average everyday Imperial citizen who doesn't really give that much of a fuck about the government and is just trying to live their life. Particularly on the fringes, whereas the homeworld and the core sector suffered a real talent drain, a real rot, as people dispersed and went seeking new ideas. When they went and joined factions such as the Philosophers of the Ancients. The fringe worlds are thriving. They're booming. What business does the homeworld really have overseeing them, controlling them? Wouldn't it be better if, Miriam Ravenor wasn't? I mean, she's been gone for 24 years, right? Maybe she was good, but things are different now. And how she ended up dying, the official histories cannot elaborate upon. Perhaps in the future, the royal line will change that directive, and the official historian and the office of the official historian may report upon findings and events surrounding Miriam's death, but it cannot be said right now. Which leads us into, Bran Ravenor, the diplomat, twice crowned, with his wife, Miriam's ouster from power, abdication, forced resignation, relocation. We don't have to specify how exactly the political maneuvering occurred, but based upon Bran's sobriquet, his epithet, the name by which he is known through time, and his wife, and his dad, and Miriam's 24-year absence, combined with the Empire being in a fall, we can easily visualize, and I use the royal we, of course, for, imperial bloodline. I'm the official historian. I could use a we, fuck you. First person plural. How Bran managed to accumulate power for himself, and the series of major crises he had to go through. Not minor events, but struggling, not grasping tightly, not bringing down a hammer, not yearning for bloodshed, but a gray eminence, how deftly, adroitly, creatively, he, with the assistance of his family, barring we don't talk about Vargas. How he so skillfully handled the various situations in the rot of the core sector. A rot which may have continued until the fall of House Ravenor, and due to the Empire being conquered by another faction or by another house managing to seize control, until a terror weapon, obliterated the beloved planet of Erebus. You can see how, because of the talent drain that occurred, because of the vibrancy of life and power which existed upon the fringe worlds of the Empire, and the philosophers of the ancients, strong out there, so strong in their pursuit, their hunger, secrets for the times long ago, for the knowledge lost, and a way that they could wield that to shatter the Empire. Through funding of the Orion Collective, they got an operative in position which killed Alira. They weren't able to do anything with Miriam, but this new plan, this near unique, if not unique device, funded by who knows, supplied by what knows, containing was going to be the device that would be conveyed through sympathizers to the homeworld, where it would consume it. And then, in the ashes, when people needed leadership, they could look to the philosophers. They could look to the knowledge of the ancients, of the time long past, these new ways of thinking, and know that the Empire was no longer what was best. And the weapon fired prematurely. Perhaps it was counter-espionage. Perhaps the navigator, who knew that weapon was going to be upon his vessel, alerted someone in the Imperial government. Perhaps a device or some sort of desperate maneuver was employed to sabotage this weapon in its final testing before it could be transported to the homeworld. Perhaps it was serendipity. Perhaps another house intervened. Perhaps a foreign power managed to intervene, wanting to keep the, like, our house, wanting to keep this current situation, this fall, like, intact. Whatever the case may be, and details, it cannot be certain. The official history, I'm not a mind reader. We are not mind readers. We are not a mind reader. Oh my god. Official history, please. Shoes. No. Went off prematurely, and Erebus has been annihilated. It's gone. And the solar system, gone. And the havoc and destruction in nearby systems, what that has played upon communications, how jumps have had to be reconfigured around the black hole, what that has changed, and as well as what Erebus represented to this empire and fall, to these people who sought new moral choices and new leadership. This emblem of something that could be different, erased by the philosophers of the ancients, proven in a way that is inescapable and inexcusable. And yes, I am still incapable of evaluating the ramifications of this catastrophe and how it will shape trade, culture, philosophy, everything for as long as the Empire endures. But from the ashes of this cultural touchstone, this pillar, you can imagine the restaurant of eternity and a mega colossal museum devoted to the ancients, in orbit there, all the tourism, all the pilgrims, all of them gone. And from the ashes of all of that, the Empire begins to rise, and will, much like his ancestor Clovis, amasses power, military power, and financial backing, including from his father, to take the hammer of House Ravenor and bring it crashing down upon worlds. Persephone Star Cluster, perhaps home to former citizens of this empire who fled it, who decided they no longer needed it. Perhaps containing silos of supplies where the philosophers of the ancients, fled, where they in this particular portion of the empire, they gather their power. They're like, what the fuck? How did this happen? Where did we go wrong? What do we do? The organization and leadership structure being complicated in the best of times, and this most certainly not being the best of times. And Will just comes in and after all, he is a tyrant, and brings back semi-precious metals and fresh blood to resuscitate the core sector. And then Bran died in fire. Listen, I don't, man, I think that's self-explanatory. I'm not going to provide any further detail at this time. I got nothing still. It's just, well, fuck. But at least the Empire hasn't died in a fire. Not yet. Anyway, whew, that was damn near 25 minutes spent in reflection. Really, you could make this a separate video. I didn't think I would spend this long. Well, you know what? Sure. I was going to roll some dice. We still can, but we can do that in the next video. We'll, the official interpretations, musings, reflections. I don't know. Future Grimith will think of some clever simile. Not simile. Some clever synonym to pull out of his lexicon. Or some other abstruse bullshit. Let's just throw in a bunch of more words and just chop it all up, make it sound like I'm cool. As if I haven't done that over the course of my teenage life. We'll talk to you all later.